Hey everyone. On the new episode of Everything is Personal, I sit down with Angie Roullier. She's the writer of Pop for the People and Bud Tenders Blueprint. And you get to really experience what she did for her autoimmune condition and how she leveraged that to teach other people on how the endocannabinoid system works and how phytocannabis can help. So listen to this episode and don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow. Thank you.
Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. Today, our guest is Angie Roullier. How you doing, Angie?
I'm doing well,
I
Len.
love saying that name. It just it rolls off the tongue.
For some.
I wanted to ask you, was there something that happened in your life or in your body or something that was going on when you realized maybe the system, and I'll put it in quotes, but if you can't see me, I'm making air quotes. The system wasn't helping you,
As far as the medical system, the healthcare system?
the
Oh,
healthcare system.
absolutely. Absolutely. So I have a hereditary disease. So I have been seeing the healthcare system fail my family since the time I could walk. So, which is no surprise to anybody who has, ever been to a doctor. And it seems like these days, these health systems just get bigger and, more aggressive and, things of that nature. So I believe that is why people really need to start educating themselves and start to take, little bits and pieces of their healthcare into their own hands.
So, if you don't mind sharing, what is that hereditary or chronic condition?
So it's called Charcot-Marie-Tooth. It's named after the doctors who discovered it, CMT for short. It's actually considered a rare disease, even though it hits 1 in 2,500 people in the world.
Wow.
So you would think with those numbers, it wouldn't be considered a rare disease, which is one of the frustrations of us that actually have the disease, because that limits the research. It's not a big flashy name or anything like that to where, people are going to throw money, at the research to look into it. But apparently it's very popular. It is almost always misdiagnosed. Drop foot is one of the very common conditions. And so doctors like to equate that to other things before they look into like the genetics of what's going on with your nervous system.
So, you said it was discovered when you were a baby, basically. So, what were or a child? What were the symptoms that you were seeing, and how was it discovered, and what was the process you had to go through in the beginning?
Well, knowing that it ran in the family, we, it's coming for you. So it's just a matter of when. My type of CMT actually hits once the hormones start kicking in. And for all of us, it's been a little bit different. The doctors like to say there's a 50-50 chance of you passing it on. I call bullshit because we all have it in some form or another. For example, my brother's way worse, and his did hit when it hit puberty. He went, one day to being, a healthy, 15-year-old boy to not being able to button his shirts within a summer. For me personally, it didn't happen until I got pregnant. And after I had my daughter, I went from, being fully capable and, not really giving it another thought. I was fairly healthy. We were always taught if you don't use it, you lose it. So we tried to stay active. But after the birth of my daughter, all of a sudden I couldn't button her onesies. So it came on pretty hard, pretty fast. Again, with the drop foot, it's a lot of tripping. Dexterity these days, a Ziploc bag is my worst enemy. It's just that, the fine motor skills just are not great.
So what is happening? Is it the communication from muscles and nerves that's being hindered, I guess? So yeah, is that how it works? So is it more? So I understand the genetic part, but the epigenetic expression is caused by hormone changes and immune response. So it's more of an autoimmune trigger for that. Is that The way I'm
That seems to set it off. So it's more of a hormonal thing. And, the longest time we always compared it to muscular dystrophy, just because that was something that everybody knew, just because of the Jerry Lewis telethon. We would say that we're Jerry's kids, and all of a sudden people get it, and we're really trying to break ourselves of that habit if we want to bring attention to this rare disease and get it out of the rare disease category. But it is. So, it's my understanding when it comes down to the nerve, it's the myelin sheath that breaks down, and therefore it's not getting the signals, and your muscles therefore are like, well, I'm not getting a signal. They must not need me anymore. And then the muscles start to waste away. It seems to be the muscles in the hands, the lower extremities. It can mess with your throat. My brother has a real hard time speaking because it has actually attacked the muscles around his vocal cords, things like that. And at the end of the day, when you get down to it, it's a duplicate gene that we are born with. And before I had my daughter, I actually went for genetic testing. And I'm like, okay, well, if it's, me and my layman ignorance, I'm like, well, if it's a double gene, just can't you take one out? You know what I mean? And then boom, we've just eradicated this disease, from our bloodline. And, as you well know, it doesn't really work that way. And
Well,
then,
it can, with CRISPR right now, they have gene editing technology, so they can go in and do that. The issue with some of these diseases and conditions is there are some morality, according to the
for
powers that
sure.
be, that limit what you can use that for. Now, I was listening to a talk by Peter Diamandis. Anybody can look up who Peter is. MD, PhD, runs the X Prize, among other things. And he was talking about CRISPR being empowered and in position to eradicate a whole bunch of diseases like sickle cell, etc. And they're doing it now. So it's being able to go in, see what the gene is, what the genotype is, and change the C to a T or remove that, whatever that is. And even things like Down syndrome, where you have extra chromosomes. The challenge is they don't know if they need to remove it. Do they replace it with something? What
Right.
will actually the removing the sequence cause? But with AI, you can pretty much predict a lot of that stuff. It's just if you have this power to edit genes, can you use it for nefarious, purposes or something? I guess
Well, that's the line in the sand, right? It's not like I'm going in saying, hey, I want my kid to have blue eyes and dimples.
right.
You know what I mean?
They're like, yeah, we'll throw that in. We'll throw that
Yeah.
in as a bonus.
Right. That's an extra rider on your insurance policy. But you're right, because that question was put to us. As at that point, they start asking if you're playing God, that kind of thing. And, a lot of doctors actually discouraged me from having children. They're like, don't you dare pass it on. Let it stop with you. And obviously, my daughter thrives. So that was not an option.
So tell me about your experience with the traditional sick care slash, healthcare industry and the way that they approached treatment for you.
Well, it was pretty standard. It was pretty black and white. It was, this is what we know about it. These are the treatments that we've always used. Why should we try anything different? And it was, pretty much just throwing pills at you. You would go in every couple of years for, an EMG, they'd electrocute you just to see how you jumped or whether you didn't jump. And that was just pretty much the status quo. My brother worked for the University of Michigan, which is one of the finest hospitals in the country. And even they had, the same way of looking at our disease and, to the point where he won't even talk about it. He gets so frustrated and so bent out of shape, just about the lack of open-mindedness, especially these days. There's so many other alternative therapies that, we are willing to try. We're willing to be guinea pigs.
Yeah.
I go downtown Detroit, once, sometimes twice a year and let them do their guinea pig studies just to add to their research. I mean, it's just something that we have to do if we want treatment, to progress. So again, it's a lot of pills. Um,
But but the pill? It's like it's not looking to cure
oh
anything,
gosh,
right?
no.
It's so they're looking to do what is it? Is it to turn down the epigenetic, especially autoimmune response? Like, what is the purpose, or is it just an analgesic? Well, we're
Yeah,
gonna try to address the pain, and
it's
that's
just
it.
painkillers. That is absolutely all there is to it. And as everybody knows, it masks the symptoms. Not only does it kill, or should I say soften the edges of
Right.
what's going on with your body, but it also disconnects your head from the pain. And then next thing you're a walking zombie, and you're taking fistfuls at every meal, and you find yourself dependent on all of these pharmaceuticals.
And plus the side effects of all those. So
Oh,
there's a side
oh,
effect, and they have a pill for the side effect. So you're constantly on this
yeah.
hamster wheel.
Yeah, it's a domino effect for sure. And that's actually what got me into what I do now with cannabis is my kidneys were starting to fail from
Yes.
all of these years of taking these pills, and light bulb, I found it extremely unacceptable.
So when you were you a cannabis consumer prior to this in your life? Is that something you did? I can't stand recreational because I always think of it as it's a therapeutic product. People use it for whatever purpose they want, but we somehow like label it recreational, and
Yeah.
I don't know why. Were you a user of cannabis prior to this, and were you using it just for without purpose? I guess is that a good way to say it?
It is, and that's absolutely spot on. I was pretty much like every other Gen X out there. I went to an all-girl Catholic high school, and so I was the
Best
one.
place to start smoking weed, I think.
We are the worst influences, absolutely. And in between the cars, at the pep rallies and things like that, there because we didn't know that there was a purpose. That there was something more behind it. And it wasn't until my own medical, condition and the failure of the health system that kind of brought it to light. Here in Michigan, we've had medical marijuana since 2008. Not as long as you guys in California have had it, but we did see value in it. And then all of a sudden, it's like, well, how can something, that I used for fun in high school all of a sudden be good for me? And that really got me to start, looking into the research and, what exactly was going on with this plant, as opposed to, you hand somebody your cigarette pack and you say, just don't take the one without the filter.
So what when you read the research and you said, I'm going to consume this now with purpose,
Mhm.
how did you consume and what was the effect?
So it was really important for me to get off of these pills. Like I said, the last doctor's visit, the issue was my kidneys, and as you had mentioned, it was here's another pill to combat the side effects. What's going on with your kidneys? Instead of actually trying to tone down the pills and back off the kidneys. So I looked into it. I was completely overwhelmed. The science is absolutely, not my strong suit.
Uh,
So I had found myself a caregiver who actually knew what he was doing and understood cannabinoids and terpenes and, things of that nature. And we slowly started, you know, replacing, some of these, pharmaceuticals, with cannabis. And I've got to say, full disclosure, please don't do this without your doctor's knowledge. A lot of people think that they can stop taking something that their doctor has been prescribing them forever and switch it out for the plant. Please don't do that. It's extremely dangerous. Your doctor does not have to agree with your choices, but they do have to respect your choice.
yeah.
So I just got to put that little blurb in there just for responsibility's sake.
No, it makes sense, and also just to add to that, contraindications, and there's contraindications with phytocannabinoids and prescription medications. So
Sure.
even if your healthcare practitioner is not aware of that, I always make the suggestion not to consume your prescription medication together with your phytocannabinoids. Continue doing what your doctor suggested. Wait, and then you can consume your phytocannabinoids. And if your practitioner, if your doctor is on the journey with you, you're
Mhm.
having open dialogue and communication. I absolutely agree with you. They don't have to agree to it, but there's a ton of research. If they want to question it, they can get and read, or they can use one of the AI services, whatever that is, to upload some studies and maybe give them a summary of those if they don't have time.
No, for sure. And one of the tricks I've used is when I find a doctor who's like completely against it, just because either he doesn't want to take the time to understand it or he thinks he knows all that there is to know to be a doctor and he doesn't need to know anymore. I find out where he went to medical school and I pull research from his alma mater.
Mm.
They have a real hard time poo-pooing on the research when it comes from where they
I
went to.
went there. What do you mean? It's the best, good school.
Yeah,
So the best,
yeah.
best makes sense. So was your goal to replace? And I know you put your disclaimer out there, so we're just having a conversation about it. Was your
Mhm.
goal to replace your prescription medication with phytocannabinoids?
Absolutely. Yeah, it really was just because the pharmaceuticals, because I had been taking them for so long, were doing horrible things to my body. I mean, I was, early 30s, fairly young, single
Yeah.
mom. There's no way my body should have been wasting away like that. And my quality of life was awful. Just, living pill to pill and, again, trying to, juggle being a single mom. So I really wanted to give plant medicine, its fair shot and to see where it's at. And did I replace every single one of my medications? Absolutely not. Again, as a Gen Xer, blood pressure and, those things start creeping in that you really, it is what it is. But I'm a firm believer that plant medicine works best in conjunction with modern medicin.
Yeah, I agree with you. Adjunct therapy, 100%.
Yeah,
And yeah, I'm glad you said that because there's a lot of advocates out there like all you need is the plant. I'm like,
no,
it's not a cure all for everything. It's
not a magic bullet.
adjunct therapy. So how do you feel the mechanism, like what when you're consuming phytocannabinoids, and if you don't know, like the deep science, whatever, I'm not, this isn't like a medical discussion, but I'm just curious, what do you feel that it was doing or it is doing in your body?
I feel more present. I find it easier on me mentally, emotionally, and physically if I can reach for CBD in the middle of a Tuesday because my back is screaming, as opposed to having to take, a fistful of Motrin.
Yeah.
I feel better about the way that I'm taking care of myself,
Mhm.
as opposed to, only being tied to one option, and if the CBD doesn't cut it and my back is just being unreasonable that day, well, okay, but at least I tried the CBD first,
Yeah.
which is something that, I've been doing this for 16 years. And unfortunately, plant medicine seems to be a last ditch effort for a lot of people instead of something that they're going to try first.
Yeah, I mean they've called it like you're absolutely right. Like it's your exit drug or it's the
Mhm.
last ditch effort. I had my previous company. We worked with cancer patients that were given less than a year to live. So they tried everything and then they were like, ah, we're just we're kind of giving up. And it was their last ditch effort. And what it did is not only did it, and it not make any claims, it extended life for many of
Mhm.
them. I had people that were 6 months left to live, but they lived for 6 years. But it improved quality of life, which
For
I,
sure.
I believe, we talk about this whole placebo effect. Oh, it's placebo. Who cares if it's placebo? And it doesn't matter if your brain is wired and it's telling your body to heal. Well, that's placebo anyway. So if it's
For sure.
a sugar pill, it doesn't matter. But fortunately, with cannabis, there's plenty of science on why some of these things would actually work. I'm glad you brought up CBD and cannabidiol, but I think that people don't really understand the mechanism. Uh, I don't want to get on my soapbox and talk about this the sciencey part of it, but I think it's important for people to understand because I've been seeing so much, and I'm going to get into the advocacy part of it because all of a sudden, maybe it's rescheduling. I don't know why, but all of a sudden, I'm seeing so much social media. All of a sudden, it's coming back to the reefer madness. Oh no, it causes schizophrenia. It causes this, and like these are legitimate people that may have had an experience. So, do you mind if I take like a minute, maybe, and you can chime in? We'll have a conversation about what cannabis actually does in the body based on the hundreds of thousands of research studies that have been done on PubMed. Um,
Yeah.
so I wanted to let people know, like we have this endocannabinoid system, and people talk about all these drugs, right? So we're taking drugs, and these drugs are doing something in our bodies. And I think it's important for people to understand that when you're consuming something that's exogenous, the effect that you get is based on what's going on endogenously. Exogenous is outside the body, endogenous is in the body. So we have this amazing system, this endocannabinoid system. It was only discovered in 1992 by Dr. Raphael Michelin, but one of the things it's responsible to maintain balance and homeostasis. That's what I was asking you about uh, autoimmune. So if you have an imbalance in your own naturally occurring endocannabinoid system, other systems can be out of whack. So you have an
Sure.
overactive immune response, underactive immune response, and seeing this being in the genetics field, it's exactly what you said. You have genetic predispositions. Something happens where you turn the switch on.
Mhm.
But if you're able to subsidize what you're naturally deficient in with phytocannabinoids and you get the right amount, now you're back to homeostasis. Now, I'm not going into receptor binding and all that stuff, but we can jump in and get pretty geeky on that.
For
But
sure.
but when I was asking what it does, so one of the things that delta 9 THC, the decarboxylated version of THCA, so you get it in a plant, you heat it, drops the acid molecule, binds to your CB1 receptors, mostly located in your brain central nervous system. When that happens, it it promotes the expression of anandamide. So that's an endogenous endocannabinoid. CBD has an affinity for the CB2 receptor, mostly located in your immune digestive system, more in the body, and that produces 2AG. Getting the right amount of those endogenous neurochemicals gets you back into balance. So THC a lot of times can work as an analgesic, while the CBD is working as to reduce the inflammation that's caused by overactive or underactive immune response. So it's addressing the inflammation while it maybe is covering the discomfort, the pain, working as an analgesic. The challenge, I think, is that trying to find the right formulation for the
For sure.
right person and personalizing this experience. And one of the things that I've been, seeing a lot of, and I don't know if you had this experience. That's why I was asking you how you're consuming. People are taking too much, and when
Yeah.
taking too much, your body's going to respond to that. So I kind of use the example, and I'm going to go back to how drugs work, but this isn't it's not about me, it's about you. But I just want people to understand that when you're taking too much of something, there's a cause and effect. So you're going to take too much THC, or delta 9 THC. Now you have too much anandamide in your bloodstream. And your immune system is going to respond or react to that. Your body's going to react to that. So you have a free radical of anandamide. It's roaming around. It's too much. And your immune system thinks something is wrong. So there's an effect. That effect can be, well, if you're predisposed to stress reactivity, maybe it'll create more stress,
Mhm.
more anxiety. For other people, they may have a depressive state. So other people, it affects the way they sleep. For other people, it could be a psychosis-like event. These are all adverse events. But the thing that frustrates me the most with this and all the media that's going on is if you drink too much alcohol, I'm not really a drinker, but if you drink too much alcohol and you have an adverse experience, whatever that is, you're like, ah, shit, I drank too much. I should not have taken that much alcohol. Nobody's calling, the alcohol companies, the beverage companies, saying to them, "Oh man, this product, what you're creating is poison," even though it is poison and it's
For
proven poison. But nobody's pointing fingers at them. Same thing with prescription medication. We all can take a handful of acetaminophen. I'm not going to talk about brand name. 10, 20, it's too much. It's not supposed to be that much. And we're all going to have an adverse effect. Guess what? If 10 of us consume a larger amount of THC, not all of us are going to have an adverse experience. Some of us may, that are predisposed to that. So the point that I wanted to make is that when you have this, when people understand it, when there's stigma still promoted, even though it's legal, CBD is legal in 50 states. It's legal in 38 different states or so for medicinal purposes. It's being rescheduled. You're using it for your purposes, working for you. What is the transition that you're making to now say, all right, well, I want to amplify this message. I want to get this out to more people so more people can take advantage of that. When did you make that decision?
Well, again, when it started to actually work for me, and again, I was blown away, what I mean, that this plant that I can grow in my garden, learning that there are one-to-ones and that there are, high CBD strains and things like that. It doesn't have to be the blow your doors off THC. It's not just the way that the plant comes. And, one of the beauties of the cannabis plant is it can be pushed or it can be pulled, depending on how it's grown and depending on what you need it for. CBD is a great example because, everybody's heard of it. I'm a big fan of THCV, just because it pops off of both of those receptors. CBDA, there is so much research out there showing that it is 1,000 times more effective for anti-nausea after chemotherapy than the drugs that they actually prescribe you for nausea after chemotherapy. So my argument with people is, I'm like, well, why wouldn't you start with the plant? Why, if you're trying to get vitamin C in your life, why wouldn't you start with the orange instead of, taking the supplement? The supplement is filled with binders and all other kinds of bullshit to where the orange actually has folic acid and, other great things that your body needs to work in conjunction. I mean, I'll sing it from the mountaintop that, whole plant medicine is where it's at. It's, as far as that, how it works in your body and how it doesn't work in your body.
Well, when did you say, I'm going to formalize this, what I'm doing, and I'm going to create something that allows me to speak to a greater audience and be a true advocate for the plant?
Oh, I jumped right into the industry. I was a realtor for 20 years. And like I said, Michigan's been, doing it since 2008. So in 2010, I think we can all remember what the real estate market was like in 2008.
Yeah, I was a commercial real estate broker at the time. So,
so my pain, right?
Yes.
It was an absolute nightmare. And I just kept seeing all of these people being treated so poorly and, humans taking advantage of other, human situations. And I had to get out for my own mental health. And cannabis was just starting. Pot shops were starting to pop up here in Michigan. I was, late 30s. I'm like, well, what the hell? If I'm going to switch careers, all in. So that's exactly what I did. I started working for a certification doctor, and then reception, and then bud tending, and then management. And then, and this is how I learned. I learned by hands-on and, meeting the people at the counter. It's not like I just went to, school and took a couple of classes and now all of a sudden, I'm a master grower or, what I mean? Things like that. I actually got into the trenches and learned from the people actually, producing this medicine, the growers and the processors. And to this day, I have yet to get bored. As you know, cannabis changes daily, and that's the science, that's the law, that's, the people who consume it. And I just, again, I can't help myself. And I kept getting the same questions over and over again at the counter. And, I don't want to say I got tired of answering the same questions, but there was a real need for it. And that is when I decided to put it all down on paper in very layman's terms to where you can explain it to grandma, you can explain it to, the person who's completely against it and is nerding out on the science. So that was it for me. I'm like, let's get it out there. And, now this leg is getting these bud tenders a little bit more educated. So Nana's not taking too much fire and deciding to clean the top of the refrigerator and falling and breaking a hip.
So what is pot for the people? So I say pot
You
for the people.
did, yes. So that's my layman's terms. That covers, the history, and it is the very bare bones. I say it all the time. I'm like, you could write volumes on any one of
So
these topics.
it's a book.
It is, yes,
Got it.
yeah.
Got it.
That's my first book, and it's for anybody who just wants to learn the basics. You want to buy a car, you don't just blindly walk into a car dealership. You do a little bit of research. There is
Sure.
personal responsibility when it comes to using cannabis as medicine.
So when you decided to go into cannabis full time, all
Mhm.
in, what was the response from your family, immediate, distant? Was there any stigma associated with that?
Oh, for sure. Well, I've always been the black sheep, so what the hell? You know what I mean? They were already disappointed. The only real concern I had is, again, I was a single mom. And I didn't want my daughter to get any backlash because what I decided to do as my last career in life. And thankfully, I've been blessed with a very smart old soul for a daughter. And she would, come home and say, they sent a representative from the DEA today, Mom. You're never going to believe the bullshit they tried selling us. Because at the age of 15, she knew that, there was a lot of stigma out there and, that they didn't understand it the way that I did. And I taught her the way, that I had learned. So that was probably the only thing that, kind of gave me some hesitation when I first got into cannabis. As far as the rest of the family, they weren't surprised.
Yeah, I understand. Um, when you got into cannabis, what are the what changed from when you first got into it to what it is now? Like both positive and negative that you're seeing, because you're on the ground there
Yeah.
watching on a daily basis.
Yeah. Well, some of the positives from then till now, there's a lot more focus on the minor cannabinoids, the importance of terpenes, flavonoids. We've gotten a little bit more in depth into the actual compounds in the plant. To where I first started, I mean, it was just THC. CBD was just, coming around and the one-to-ones. On the ugly side, we've got these frankennoids. We've got so many of these beautiful compounds in the plant. Maybe we should figure out what they can do before we start playing mad scientist and, start, overusing these loopholes. And I want to clarify when I say, using these loopholes because they are helping people in states that don't have access. So I hate to
Are
take
you?
away.
I'm sorry. I want to clarify for the audience. Are you talking about like Delta 8, Delta 10, like isomers of being able to isolate these and manipulate these chemicals in the plant? Or
Well, so they're available, but they're in such small amounts in the plant that they
yeah,
do have to be, either converted, from THC or they have to be dickered with in some way to make enough of it for, consumption, to get it out there to the public. Um, so it's not necessarily those, but when, I speak of the loophole, I mean, some of these states have, better medicine than we do here in Michigan. You can find one-to-ones in North Carolina. You can find high CBD to where I can't find that here in a pot shop because it's all, higher, faster, better. And it's, complete commercialism has taken over the pot industry here. And I believe that we've lost, that, medical angle of what started it all,
yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that's on us as an industry.
for sure.
I think one of the things that we didn't learn from Canada at all, and we didn't learn from Colorado and California.
Mhm.
When I used to have dispensaries back in the day, we try to have like a 4-to-1 ratios and all that stuff. Now
Yeah.
you walk into a dispensary, it's plenty of concentrates. Like you can get shatter, you can get diamonds, you can get this really, really high amounts of THC. And I think that maybe it's lack of education, maybe it's, as you said, commercialism of some sorts, but somehow, some way, we started connecting that a high THC for the lowest price is the
Yeah.
best deal.
And
Like
it's
that,
bullshit.
it doesn't even make logical sense because you're only going to get the amount that you need, and the
Mhm.
rest of it is going to go elsewhere. It's not going to be utilized, and what it can do is actually create these adverse effects that we talked about. And the issue with this is we're feeding the people who are waving the flag against the industry. We're giving them fodder and we're giving them ammunition to go out and wave the flag. See, there's psychosis. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, somebody's eating, 1,000 milligram THC edible, and they're prone to stress reactivity, PTSD, and
Mhm.
psychosomatic effects. Guess what? It's a domino effect. It's going to trigger. You can do it with other substances for sure, but you happen to do that. And by the way, they're a poor metabolizer. So not only are they consuming an edible, which probably is not the best way for them to consume because they're just
Yeah.
getting the metabolite, they're taking way too much THC. They're metabolizing it slowly. So it's a slower onset, much more powerful onset, and it
Well,
can
it
last
changes.
longer.
Yeah, I mean, the chemical structure actually changes when it's metabolized by the liver. It turns into 11-hydroxy, and that is why smoking a joint is completely different from eating that edible, even though you're losing so much of that edible through the gauntlet of your digestive system. And, and then, like you said, I mean, and then people call bullshit on cannabis as medicine. And it's like, if you're paying attention, I mean, I've had 12, 13 percenters of THC sit my ass down and be exactly what I have needed to get my shoulders to drop and
Yeah.
my back to stop screaming. And I've also had the, 35, 40 percenters that are sprayed with THCA isolate that give me nothing but a raging migraine.
Yeah.
So yeah, the madness has got to stop somewhere, but I don't think the greed is going to let us.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we're going to be forced into it because now we're going to be going head to head with big pharma, the
Yeah,
industry. But you know, we still we just started the rescheduling process, which I want to get your thoughts and opinions on. Well, let me ask you that before I move on to the next one about this rescheduling to Schedule 3.
well, I don't think it should be scheduled at all, for starters. But it's interesting because it's the way that I understand it is Schedule 3 cannot be sold over the counter.
Mhm.
So I'm real curious to see what they're going to do with the pot shops. They're certainly not going to push them all back underground because this is, billions of dollars that, people will just go right back to their local plug if they haven't already, due to the cost and due to the quality. But on the other hand, when I really come across somebody who's so adamant, and they're like personally mad at me for using cannabis, for my own afflictions, you
Mhm.
know, testosterone is a Schedule 3 drug. I'm not out there judging people who have to take testosterone for their own physical well-being. So who are they to judge me? And comparing the two kind of shuts them down a little bit. It's you stay in your lane. If I'm not hurting anybody or hurting myself, I don't understand how that's any of your business. Just like if you were to have to take testosterone, I'm not, asking you for your drug list from your doctor. I'm not going to, put you in a certain, social box, just, like they do with us that use cannabis. So yeah, we'll see what comes out in the wash as far as the Schedule 3. The DEA is really not hustling on it, but it got away from them. It's a big moneymaker, and now they're gonna have to try and find something to do with it.
Yeah, rescheduling to 3 is going to be extremely interesting if that actually happens. I mean, the decision is made, but there's no implementation, there's no enforcement. So
Right.
you're absolutely right. How do they, if you're going to be prescribed a medicine, Well, you have to have an FDA approved medicine to prescribe,
Right.
and you have to have a some sort of dispensary, whether it's a pharmacy or something else, dispense it so it's consistent. I mean, one of the things I think that our industry suffers from is this lack of consistency because I can get a product in Los Angeles and I'm going to go and try to get the same exact product in Michigan and it's not going to be the same.
No.
First of all, even the lab testing is not the same,
Mm-mm.
and all kinds of issues with that. So having federal oversight of that, I don't have a real issue with. I wonder, like, from from a from a standpoint of guiding people. So you have the science that's available now.
Mhm.
You have your intuition. You have your lived experiences. How how do we guide people? We don't provide medical advice, but people are seeking, they don't have anywhere to go to. How do you balance this, all the experiences that you've had and learned? How do you balance it with giving suggestions to people that actually need it?
Yeah, it's not easy. And that's why I'm a firm believer in just the basics of education. So nothing makes me madder when people, and extremely smart people, with the plant say purple punch is the best thing for migraines. How can you possibly say that? Because you can take three samples of purple punch from three separate pot shops in Michigan, and they're all going to have different profiles. So if people know that, myrcene helps them sleep, you can teach them to go in and ask, hey, can I see the terp profiles on this one, and this one? And if they don't know, the bud tender should be able to look at it and go, okay, well, the grape stomper and the purple punch are pretty much the same damn thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's just it's frustrating because if I can figure it out, pretty much anybody can figure it out. Okay,
Well,
it's
I think it's also on us as an industry, these names, like you're going to go and going back to the whole oversight. If I buy a nutraceutical or a supplement or vitamin and I buy it in California, and then I go to Pennsylvania and buy it, there's label, there's specific requirements that you must have on your label. There's consistency to labeling. So I don't have to question it. When I pick it up, I look at it, it's the same label, it has all the ingredients. I go there. Why do we have to name these things? Purple Punch or Alaskan Thunderfuck. Like I don't understand these names. Grandma Mary going into the dispensary saying, "Hey, can I get the Alaskan Thunderfuck?" is probably entertaining for a minute, but it doesn't do anything to lift our industry out of the dark ages. So
no, and out of the stigma. I mean, you really can't say, show them and say, okay, these are the cannabinoids and these are the terpenes, and this is why I'm recommending for you. Oh, and by the way, it's called green crack. You
exactly.
I mean, it's difficult, and you get a lot of these, legacy people who say, oh, I've grown it, and it's, my phenotype, and I should be allowed to name it, and well, don't I think, and I'm going to say it, that one of the worst ones I've ever heard was placenta. Who wants to smoke that? Whether it's, for fun or whether it's for back pain. I mean, stop. You're doing this industry more harm than you are good, and like you said, when you go to the drugstore and you go for your cough medicine, you can turn the bottle around. It's got this snuffling, sneezing, you know what I mean? All the things that you're looking for. And I believe that's why it's okay for them, to splice and dice this plant and to isolate it, because they have to understand what the individual compounds can do independently. But again, I'm a big fan of whole plant. And the minute you tear that
it
bitch apart,
doesn't it doesn't work the same way. I mean, we've
it
already
doesn't. As
proven it
lost.
many,
Yeah.
many, many times over. And sometimes even looking at a mass spectrometer, you can see other cannabinoids that we have not identified, but they're
Mhm.
present there. So by removing that plant, you're not getting the same efficacious results. So it's got to
Yeah.
be that plant. Now, can you reformulate it? Yeah, I mean, you can probably do 5 components with these terpenes or something of that nature. But big pharma really gets there when you're using multiple components, it doesn't really work for the mindset and the structure of doing a clinical trial because you're not sure which component does what. So,
Right.
I mean, I understand, but there are nutraceuticals which have multiple components that
Mhm.
they don't make claims, they make suggestions. May, as you were saying, may support your migraine or something of that nature. So we can use the same exact the same exact process and this what is already in place to sort of try to put cannabis into that bucket. I was wondering what frustrates you most about how cannabis is portrayed either in media or politics or both?
Yeah. How much time you got?
Bring it.
Again, the ignorance, regardless of the subject, I've always been, please educate yourself before you open your mouth. You don't have to be for it. You could be against it, but at least have an educated opinion. Don't come out with, this is the devil's lettuce, because I was raised that way. Um, and that is one of my frustrations. Another one of my frustrations again, and back to the names, some of this packaging is really getting out of hand, and I really feel for the female bud tenders who have to sell this stuff. I mean, there's Porn Nug is a brand. You know what I mean? And they're already, it's like a bartender. They're already, getting leered at and, innuendos and all of those other things. We can do better. You know what I mean? That's not really a part of the cannabis culture to come across that way. That is commercialism. Sex sells. Which I understand to a point, but people are taking such liberties with some of this stuff that it's just out of control. Um, Everybody wants to own a piece of this plant, and I believe that the culture is being lost because it's all about basket sales at the counter. It's not about helping that person that came in. And one of the things that I do teach here in Michigan is, the day before we went adult use, we had almost 400,000 registered medical patients. Today, we have less than 30,000. Okay, these people didn't move out of state. They didn't stop smoking weed. They just don't want to be on that list. They don't want to get on that medical card list. So that tells me that these people are still coming into the shops, but they are no longer being treated as somebody who is using the plant for medicine. They're just being treated as a sale. And that makes my head explode, when I walk in and someone's like, "Oh, girlfriend, I got that. I got what you need." Get the hell away from me. I'm going to tell you right now, you don't. Because that's not the approach. The approach is what brings you in. And then you let the consumer tell you whether they're there for medical reasons or not.
Yeah, I mean, we still have to, or you have to sort of. There's a fine line
Mhm.
because you're not a healthcare practitioner, but people
Correct.
are coming in with health concerns. So that dance has been really interesting. How do you feel that this work changed you as a human being?
I definitely got a little bit more compassion. Slinging real estate. You know what I mean? You've got to be a little tougher. You've got, it's definitely more of a, you're a pusher. You're in sales. You're in hardcore sales. Whether you're trying to move that big building or you're trying to get that subdivision. Um, it really it gets me to see people for who they are and to take that person as who they are as they stand in front of me. It kind of gets me to hone in on, okay, Sally's, she's been taking Percocet for 30 years for her shoulder, and now she's been using topical to try and replace that. How do I get rid of the bless your heart face before she sees it? And then, how do you, help work her through it? And there's a huge responsibility for bud tenders because you're right, we are not medically trained in any way. We have no business, saying this will work and this won't. So again, back to the personal responsibility, you always ask, do you take any drugs, that have a grapefruit warning? Do you have any seasonal allergies? Are you a diabetic? These are questions that have to or should come out in every consultation. One of my biggest, non-popular opinions is I believe every, dispensary needs a sign in the lobby that says cannabis may cause drug interactions. And that should be the next question when they meet up with the bud tender. If they don't know why, that bud tender sure shit should.
Or maybe how about having a healthcare practitioner available there that can answer some healthcare questions for them if they have
All day.
concerns.
Yeah, we've had a couple of those in Michigan and they were worth their weight in gold.
So, not to put you in the spot, but I am anyway. What do you, your crystal ball, Angie's crystal ball? What would you like to see happen with this industry in the next, let's say, 5 years? Or sort of, part of it is a prediction. Part of it is like you have the control to do what you think is best for the industry.
I would like to see medical and adult use segregated again, not all under one roof, um, just specific places for them to go. And, I know you hate the term, but the recreational, they can, do their thing and, their sprayed flower and their, blow your doors off, concentrates. And then, it may be under the same roof, but at least it's a different part. And that is where, the pharmacist or, the medical practitioner, you can go in and you can take time. You don't feel like you're being turned and burned like you do in the adult use.
Yeah, I love that idea. I love having even compounding pharmacists. I mean, they have it in other countries that
They
are
do.
do a compound for the person needs it. The practitioner, the doctor will make a recommendation, and the compounding pharmacist will fulfill that. I completely agree with that notion as well. I- what do you think will happen in the next few years, if anything?
And that is absolutely anybody's guess. I mean, again, it all comes down to that rescheduling. What is that going to do? How much more research is going to be opened up? As you know, the National Institute of Health has spent way more money on finding what's wrong with cannabis and why we shouldn't use it as medicine instead of, what are some of the positives? And so they've always been looking for the negatives. They're not looking for the positives that can be found in cannabinoids and terpenes. I would love to see that scale switch.
Yeah, I think it's a great point because I'm not sure if people realize that the grants that are available for phytocannabinoid research are all about adverse effects of cannabis.
Yep.
So you're sort of backing into the research with the hypothesis of an adverse event, and then you're trying to prove out, yes, there's an adverse event, whatever that may be, or maybe it's not. And now you publish it with that notion in mind. So you have to do that. And we published a few with Wayne State actually
Yeah.
not that long ago on PubMed, and we have a few other ones that are coming. But that's the goal. I mean, that's where the grants are coming from for those adverse effects. Um, yeah, and I completely agree with you on this medicinal side because just a quick story on the people that are consuming a lot. The dabbers, I'll just label them the dabbers. So I was invited to a 420 event. I'm like, I don't even 420 doesn't mean anything anymore. It used to way back in the day, but I'm like, all right, fine, I'll go. And there was a bunch of younger people, and they were asking me like, "What do you do?" So I was saying, we have I have this company on the DNA, but we have an endocannabinoid system DNA test and blah blah blah. And one of the guys like, I don't need that stuff. I dab all day. I don't get an adverse effect. I consume as much as I want and no issues. Yeah, I'm like, cool. Maybe it's not for you. It's fine. Not for
Yeah.
anybody. You do you. You're free to do whatever you want to do. And one of the girls that was standing there, she goes, you know what? I dab too, but I don't do well with edibles. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, well, would you be open to learning why? Maybe I can give you some examples. So I started having this conversation, and the guy that's an all day dabber came up and he's like, I don't do well with edibles either. So
Oh, imagine that.
came full circle. I was like, all right, well, let's have a conversation. So I just believe this there's a certain arrogance. There's a certain uh even with the like the OGs that you said that, oh, I have the power to grow my own and call whatever I want. I've been in the industry on and off for a very long time, and the people that actually, were the forefathers of this industry, they didn't
Mhm.
have this mindset.
No,
You look at Dennis Prawn and Brownie Mary, and the industry grew. The medical industry grew on AIDS and cancer patients and
Mhm.
helping them with brownies and all these other things. And even the people that brought, therapeutic properties, cultivars like Harlequin, the original Harlequin.
Yeah, yeah.
Remember,
Charlotte's Web.
yeah,
Um,
Charlotte, the original Charlotte's Web.
yeah.
I was friends with some of the Stanley brothers who brought that. So I knew the original formulation. We've sent so many people, to get treated with that years ago. And I remember Wade Laughter was the original person that brought the Harlequin strain. He was very balanced originally, maybe 14, 12% THC,
Oh,
but
that's beautiful.
a lot of CBD and naturally. And I
Yeah,
think the industry started getting away from that. And maybe we're feeding into that stigma, and now the bell is ringing on the other side. So,
yeah,
my soapbox moment, I completely agree with you. Let's separate it back. Let's provide it's a therapeutic substance. Let's stop blaming a substance, a plant, for the adverse effects that we are accountable for ourselves, and feeding the media and industry with fodder for them to go, oh, this causes this. Well, look at everything else. Go ahead and take 50,000 milligrams of vitamin C and see what
yeah,
happens to you.
exactly.
So you have to know exactly what it is that's right
Yeah,
for
yeah. Cat Williams did a bit on that, talking about smoking weed, and he goes, "You take 13 aspirin, that'll be the last headache you ever have."
you. Exactly. That's the point. So, Angie, I wanted to shift questions a little bit, subject matters, and ask what I ask all my guests, music related questions. Let's see if you're open and how we do with these. Um, do you remember it? If so, what was the very first concert that you attended?
Oh, no problem there. I saw the Colts at Joe Louis Arena downtown. I was probably maybe 15 years old, and it was a Tuesday night, and I was supposed to be studying for a test at a girlfriend's house.
I love it. I just saw the Death Cult not that long ago, which is the original band in the Cult, so it was great. What was the last concert you attended?
Oh gosh, the last one I probably it was Dirks Bentley in a hotel ballroom, to the point where my husband and I thought it was gonna be like Dirks Bentley's, like there was gonna be a Z at the end of his name, and it was gonna be like a cover band. I'm like, there's no way this guy is playing in a room that only has 200 people in it, in a ballroom in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And lo and behold, he blew the doors off the place.
Very cool. All right, one more music question. If for the next year you could only listen to 5 albums,
Oh,
now you don't have to name the actual album. You can just say the artist if you want, if you don't remember the name of the album. But what would be those 5 albums?
well, it's got to be Tom Petty. Damn Torpedoes is my like stuck on a desert island album. Big fan of Kaleo, if I'm saying that right, lately. He's a good one. Again, anything Dean Martin. I do get into some of the old stuff. Definitely maybe some Nina Simone. And then, just for good measure, oh, well, let's, throw in some, I don't know, some Ice Cube, maybe. Just,
There you go.
just mix it up a little bit.
Cool. America's most wanted.
Yeah, for sure. You know, being from Detroit, it's just, you know, we get
I'm surprised you didn't hit Eminem, but all right.
yeah, I do. I dig his older stuff, but I'm an older woman. So, you know, and it depends on my mood, of course. But yeah, we're very blessed around these parts to have some fantastic music, you know, come out of this state. I can't believe I didn't say Bob Seger. Oh, I'm the worst Michigander.
Yeah. That was my record of the day last week, Bob Seger.
Nice. So
night moves.
oh, it's a fantastic one. Yeah.
All right. So final question for you. Please describe what your room looked like when you were growing up.
Oh, you mean when I was in it, not climbing out the window? It was, I would say it was yellow, very sunny, lots of windows. And it was warm and it was safe and I knew I was loved.
Anything on the walls, like art, posters, anything like that was memorable?
You know, I was just one of those because, again, I mean, I did 13 years of Catholic school. I did kindergarten through 12.
Yeah.
So I literally went from like holly hobby to like the cure. You know, my parents were mortified. But yeah, nothing really that, you know what you mean, that sticks.
Got it. Angie, where can people connect with you? Where can they buy the book or anything else you want to share with them?
So I am always up for a cannabis conversation. Whether, you know, you're a layman, whether you're in the industry, you can find me at angieroullier.com, AngieRoulier.com. There's tons of research on there, the good, the bad, the ugly. I don't pick sides. I just put it out there. I hope people, you know, fall down their own rabbit holes, and you can buy my books there, and you can also reach out.
Cool. Well, for my audience, I just want to say thank you so much for listening. If you're still with us, that means you like the content. So don't forget to like, subscribe, share, whatever else. Let's amplify this great content so other people can connect to this. Don't forget. Oh, by the way, and I amazing feedback that I've been getting lately. So I appreciate all the wonderful reviews have been great, and the not so wonderful we'll take them. We'll learn from those as well. It's fine. Thank you for buying my book, Making Cannabis Personal, on Amazon, wherever you get books. I have 2 new ones that are coming out as well, so look out for those. Angie, I just want to say one more time that thank you so much for the work you're doing. Thank you for being on. I think it's extremely important work. I love your take on, you know, therapeutic versus adult use and all that stuff. And I completely agree. I think we're adults. We're free to make our own decisions, what we want to put in our bodies. But you know, recreational, this recreational aspect to a therapeutic plant is actually removing the benefits that we've all experienced in your firsthand experience with the plant. So I would like to urge the industry, if anybody is listening, to start thinking about it in the way that you're proposing. Let's separate again. Let's find a delineated line. Even if it's the same shop, let's treat people who really need the plant for therapeutic purposes the way they should be treated. So thanks so much for being on. Hey, everyone. So does anybody know what greening out means? I've been the recipient of so many calls over the years of people greening out. That means they took too much THC and had an adverse reaction. So I always recommend other things, but nothing really concrete. Now I can. There's a solution. It is called Antidose. Antidose.com is quick. It's rapid. It works immediately, safe, and effective. So I love my props. If you are toasty or you are burnt, that's the difference. Now, I also love the 1 gummy, 2 gummy, 3 gummy floor. So just be aware, very narrow therapeutic window. You know exactly what you can take now if you've taken too much. Once again, it's Antidose at antidose.com. Get yours today. Hey everyone, thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share this episode, and hit that bell. Like, comment. I so appreciate that. And check me out on social under Len May or Len May DNA. Find out more on LinkedIn or lenmaycoaching.com. And remember, everything is personal.